Welcome to our first butchery lesson on how to cut up an English lamb. We've got one here that we're going to cut up in a minute on the block. Hopefully we can educate, inform and show you how we go about our job. Right, here we are at the block, and now we're going to break this lamb down into three primal joints, which are the forelamb or the shoulders, the middle and the legs. Before we do that, we're going to remove the breast, and to do this we mark just inside the knuckle of the shoulder and cut along the side of the breast. We're then going to shoulder remove the breast. And then we're going to do the same both sides so that they're evenly balanced cuts. We're now going to remove the fore of lamb, maybe the shoulders, with the two shoulders each side, by counting the rib bones 5 bones down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mark it with your knife close to the 6th bone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and do the same the other side. Take a steak knife and cut until we reach the inside of the vertebral bone. We then take our saw and cut right through the shoulder. This gives us a shoulder lamb, removing any bone dust that might be on the meat. To remove the legs from the middle, we're actually going to remove the leg with the chump left on the leg. To do this, you can feel with your thumb along the rise of the chump until you get to the end of the bone. And this is where you make your first cut, until again you reach a vertebrae. And again with a saw, this gives us our pair of legs and our middle of the lamb. Again, removing any bone dust that might be on the surface of the meat. Now working on each primal in turn, we're going to start with the legs of the lamb and separate them into individual cuts. Now the two legs are joined naturally at a seam in the leg. If you pull the legs apart, you can actually see it. So by getting your knife, just cut between the seam where you'll actually hit the top of the pelvic bone. So a sharp steak knife, you can actually split and go through nice and easily. Then using the same saw, just cut through, separate the two legs. We're now going to remove the chump from the leg, this being the chump, and the beef animal, that'll be the rump. First we trim off this lean, which we can use for a minced lamb or diced lamb. And the leg is removed from the chump a thumb's width from the top of the H bone, which is the H bone here, and angle towards the tail. Same as a carpenter, mark once, mark twice, cut once. Just saw through. The chump and the leg of lamb. And the same as the other side, thumb's distance, angle towards the tail, mark once. You can then bone the chump by trimming off the fat off the top of what would be the tenderloin. Trim off any excess fat using the tip of the knife, keeping the knife close to the bone. Just peel back the tenderloin. Now there is two bones here, so one being the vertebrae at the back and one being part of the pelvic bone, and there's a joint in between. Which allows you to separate the bone. Then you just remove the pelvic bone. Which now leaves us with a rump of lamb. You square off the back. Now that can either be sold in a piece as a little roasting joint or sous vide joint, or it can be actually sliced into steaks. Now at the middle of the lamb, which I've already taken the time to actually saw right down through the middle, equally both sides, and this gives me a best end neck, which is the loin with all the rib bones, and the loin of lamb, which have just got the lumbar vertebrae. And we're now going to separate these two into separate cuts. By going between the vertebrae, we can clearly separate the two. And this gives us the loin of lamb and the best end neck. Now to prepare the best end neck into a French trim loin, some butchers will actually take this layer off the top, which is known as the bark, which has a tendency to eat quite hard. There's a small bone which is the top of the blade bone, which we now remove. And then with the saw, we saw close to the vertebrae bone until we've gone through the ribs. Be careful not to cut into the meat. removing the vertebrae from the back. To turn this into a French trim rack, we then cut about 1 inch above the eye in a straight line across the back and remove the meat from the bone. And by simply going between each bone, we end up with a French trim rack of lamb. Moving on to the loin, the nicest way to cut chops is to actually cut between what we call the sixpence in between these vertebrae. This gives you a nice meaty lamb chop and looks much better presented on the plate. With a young lamb like this, it's very easy to cut between the bone. The fore lamb, which gives us the 2 shoulders of the lamb, traditionally we actually take 2 shoulders off and relieve what we call the scraggle lamb, which is ideal for stewing or casseroling, and that's the way I'm going to butcher this. You can leave the neck fillets, this piece on the shoulder if you desire. To do this, we just clearly mark down the middle of the shoulder and pick up the natural seam. Just slide a knife across the top of the bones. And this leaves, similarly we do the same both sides. And then we're left with the shoulder of lamb. Trim out a bit of what we call the paddywhack. And trim out the front of the lamb. And the excess fat. Finish it off with the saw through the knuckle joint.